The theory of comparative advantage was first set forth in 1817 by yet another British economist from the classical days, David Ricardo. And the historical context for the development of Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage is interesting in and of itself. At the time, Europe was considering protecting its markets from American imports through the use of tariffs or quotas. Europe's obvious concern was that America, with its abundant land and relatively cheaper labor, would have an absolute advantage in producing many goods. Under such a circumstance, America might therefore not import anything from Europe, but merely export its cheaper goods, and thereby destroy jobs in Europe. To address these concerns, Ricardo articulated the principle of comparative advantage. The key concept is this: each country in the global trading market will benefit the most by specializing in the production and exports of those goods that it can produce domestically at relatively lower costs. At the same time, each country should import those goods it produces at relatively higher costs. Now, let me repeat that because it is so important. According to the theory of comparative advantage, each country will benefit by specializing in the production and export of those goods that it can produce domestically at relatively lower costs. At the same time, each country should import those goods it produces at relatively higher costs. Thus, in our previous example, Germany should specialize in auto production and Algeria should specialize in food production. And both countries will benefit from trade, even though Germany may have an absolute advantage in both food and auto production. And that was a pretty startling conclusion, at least back in the classical days of David Ricardo. To demonstrate the theory of comparative advantage, let's go back in our time machine to David Ricardo's day and imagine a debate between Ricardo and another economist in front of a group of European trade ministers trying to decide whether to impose protective tariffs on America. The other economist we will call John Strawman, and he is a strong supporter of the theory of absolute advantage. In fact, Strawman has just presented this table in support of his recommendation for a heavy tariff against American imports. This table illustrates how much labor is necessary to produce food and clothing in America versus Europe. So looking at the table, which country has the absolute advantage in food and which country has the